So firstly, let me now introduce our former president and now patron of Meditation Association of Australia, Associate Professor Craig Hassad of Community Medicine at Monash University, a great colleague and a generous friend, a media commentator, regular publisher in medical journals, a man who's written at least 11 books, but talking to him tonight, I'm about 2 books behind, and he's on his 13th book, including New Frontiers in Medicine, Know Thyself, Mindfulness for Life, Mindful Learning, and The Mindful Home, most recently written with his wonderful wife, Deirdre. A man who leaves us all spinning, trying to follow his incredible calendar of events, and who paradoxically describes himself as enjoying sitting, doing nothing. Please welcome Craig Hassad.
Thank you very much, Ruth, and thank you to the association for putting this evening on, and Ruth and Paul and all the team who have worked so hard to put on this evening. I think it's a wonderful event that you've made happen tonight. Great to see so many people here. I'm going to spoil the silence by speaking for a while. I apologise for that, because if I was really smart, I'd just stand up here in silence for 10 minutes and then sit down again. But I'm going to spoil the silence by saying a few words, because that's what I've been asked to do. And I was actually in the original email given 4 points to talk to, so I've just treated them like bullet points, so I'm going to be speaking to those. But the first thing I want to say is I'm not sure if the title is a trick title. Meditation in Australia, Past, Present and Future. Now, it's really just about the present. There is no past, there is no future, so I'm already confused. So I'll try and get beyond that. The first point that I was invited to speak to was what brought me to meditation. And in my own experience, I didn't read a book on it, I didn't go to a class or learn from a teacher. I think my discoveries in meditation were more intuitive and from direct experience and observation. I can remember in my middle teens, I used to do sort of unusual experiments of I realised that I had a fear of going to the dentist and having a needle, and for some reason I thought I'll pay attention next time I go to actually feel what the needle feels like, actually pay attention, exquisite detail, be present to the experience of sitting in the dentist chair instead of wishing I was somewhere else and trying to avoid it and distract myself, which I look back on now and consider a mindfulness practice, or just noticing getting nervous about future events. And then when I slipped out of the present moment, I slipped into an area that was full of anxieties and preoccupations and concerns. And I noticed the effect that it had on my mind and my body. And I realised that most of my time I was in a dream world, which was a curious thing to realise about the age of 15. But it was sort of obvious to me I was in a dream world most of the time, and I didn't have a clue that I was in it. And then I think my first experience of what I would call meditation, I guess they were just mindful moments, but first experience of meditation was as a very disillusioned. I can't tell you how disillusioned I was as a medical student. I attended Melbourne University, a very fine university, but certainly was very disillusioned as a medical student. And I wasn't really learning anything that I felt had any real wisdom in it, but at the time it was just a lot of information. At 19, it was sort of like a real crossroads, and for some reason to just deal with this existential angst and so on, excuse me, I thought, I don't know what meditation is, but I think it's got something to do with sitting down and being silent. I'll try that. So I just sat down, I just impartially observed, because I didn't know what to do, so I didn't try and do anything. I didn't know what I should change or what I should experience. I didn't try and change anything or experience anything. I just sat and just observed in a very impartial, non-reactive way, the body and the mind. I sort of look back and I think I was intuitively practicing mindfulness, but it was a transformative experience. And that experience for me, I already went into medicine because I was interested in the mind, but that experience for me just really set a direction for my future career. And so in my 20s, it became a more philosophical interest, I guess, a sort of a latent philosophical and spiritual interest sort of really, in my mid-20s, sort of really started to deepen that and took the whole understanding of what it was about to a different level. So that, the next point I was invited to speak on, the way that my work has developed. And I wasn't going to be, sitting in a consulting room as a GP for the rest of my life. And I can remember a watershed moment. I was just come back from a job in hospital, 28 years old, just looking at the paper, just opening the mind to, just see where I go next because in my career. And just flipping through, and I saw this job advertisement at Monash University. I'd never opened job advertisements before, but I just see this job there, lecturer, and this thought comes into mind, medical school. All the things we weren't taught at medical school that we should have been taught, the mind, the body, how to prevent illness, and natural ways of approaching health and so on. Somebody should do something about that. And then this thought follows, hot on the heels, do something about it. And then, of course, what happened immediately after that was, oh no, because my biggest fear in life is public speaking. So taking up a job as a lecturer at university would have to be the last thing in the world that you would want to do. But it was sort of like a calling. So anyway, I felt called to do that, so I stepped into that. And because I didn't want to dedicate my life to my fears, so I just had to find a way of working with that. I met Stephen Summer, who some of you might know, outside the interview room for that job, and in the early years of this work we collaborated a lot, and so we really cross-pollinated a lot of ideas and so on, but it was just, there wasn't a job description, come and teach mindfulness and mind-body medicine at Monash University. That wasn't the brief, it was all sorts of other things, but I just felt that there was fertile ground and the possibility to do this, so I started on that work. Oh, thank you. Very much, Paul. Just going to hold a glass of water now. So started that work, and it was really step by step and learning, putting one foot in the mouth, taking it out, putting the other foot in the mouth, making lots of mistakes. But it started to happen, and so in 1991 were the first elements in core curriculum related to mindfulness. A lot was to discover was the importance of science. Now, even then, before really this exponential takeoff in the research on meditation, there was enough around at that time, the work of TM previously and so on, and it was really the language of science and being able to translate it into a practical, pragmatic thing that was relevant for students, attention and focus, coping with anxiety and stress and so on, the ability to communicate with attention. So it was really focusing on what was relevant there and trying to contextualise a very broad and generic skill to particular applications that were relevant. Anyway, the work has grown over time, and at Monash University has been tremendously fertile ground for this work, and I've had a tremendous amount of support from some wonderful people at Monash. Things happen in curious ways. I spent a lot of my, spare time at Monash. It was sort of like just running courses or speaking anywhere. Anybody was interested, running train-the-trainer programs, and had a lot of support from people doing that. And synchronicity is an interesting thing. I've been running, for no credit or anything else other than just as a service to the university, train-the-trainer programs for staff. And for a number of years, and at this time I was the deputy head of department at Monash and at an academic heads meeting. So a group like this, all the academic heads at Monash and the dean and the head of research at Monash were there and talking about, we've got to climb the world rankings, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to go further, we've got to all this. And we just had about a third or fourth round of downsizing staff, and it was just like, we've got to do more. And there was an audible groan from all the academic heads there. It was like, oh no, not more. And the head of HR stood up in that crowd and said, look, we're expecting more, and we're not doing things to support our staff and so on, and we should be doing more to support their well-being. Like, for example, Craig, you've been doing lots of things. Would you like to tell everybody about what you've been doing? All of a sudden, I'm standing there speaking to the Vice-Chancellor and every academic head in the whole university about the training, mental health and well-being, using mindfulness and so on. And out of that became a meeting with the Vice-Chancellor and the Mental Health and Monash Working Party, And then out of that came a position 2 days a week just to do mindfulness training around the university. So seconded from the medical faculty just to do mindfulness training. Now we have mindfulness in 12 different degree courses as core curriculum, apart from Monash Medical School, where I think we're the first university in the world to have it as core curriculum for all of our medical students. But now everything from MBA, pharmacy, IT, law, physio, dietetics and so on have mindfulness as core curriculum. Then there are mindfulness for academic success programs. Richard Chambers, who was just mentioned a moment ago, is 2 days a week as a mindfulness consultant there as well. So he's been tremendous to work with Richard, develop programs. The Vice Provost of Education's given us lots of resources to develop online programs. The Mindfulness MOOC with FutureLearn that we developed at Monash since late last year. I think we've had about 130,000 people go through that program, that online program. OHS and so on. So it's been tremendously supportive. My special fields of interest within the broader category, I have experienced mantra meditation as well as mindfulness, but I teach mindfulness because I respect the spiritual and philosophical traditions from which mantra meditation is taught, and I don't want to teach that out of context. So I teach mindfulness, which is easy to relate in a very pragmatic way. But the therapeutic effects of meditation, the mind-body approach, the importance of enhancing performance, self-development, improved learning and teaching. And each way, it's just a matter of in a different environment, there are different aspects that are relevant for one individual or one group. And it's really a matter of addressing those and not some other agenda. But ultimately, I'm very conscious of the fact that ultimately, it's the deepest thing that we can do in life. It is ultimately spiritual or philosophical, if you like, can take us to the core of our being. But that's not necessarily the agenda of a medical student who's sitting there or of a lawyer. I was at a law firm this morning, and that's not necessarily the agenda for that person there. So for myself, I'm conscious of what's their needs, what's their agenda, and to try and not to sort of take it beyond where somebody's ready to go. So I think it's very much, I find in my experience of teaching meditation, meeting a person where they are or a group where they are and moving from there step by step and allowing a person to unfold meditation in their life in a way that's relevant to them at their own pace, in their own way, with their own agenda. Now, just the last point, the future directions for meditation in Australia. I think there's a tremendous upward trajectory. There's just so much interest now. It's just heartwarming to see. And not just in Australia, but I think particularly in Melbourne. I was going to say Melbourne's a hotspot for meditation. Maybe it's a cool spot for meditation, I'm not sure. But anyway, like the Meditation Association, for example, Smiling Mind, and we'll hear more about Smiling Mind shortly, apart from what's happening at Monash as well. Mindful in May and the Mind Life Project, One Giant Mind, all the activities are happening in schools. Geelong Grammar is is pioneering work and so on, but so many other major schools are taking on board meditation. So there's so much happening here. It's really very encouraging because at the same time, it would be easy to be very pessimistic. I think there are some challenges, though, that we need to be conscious of, and maybe these will come up as well. It's being taught so much, but maybe not everybody who's teaching meditation really understands it from the inside out. And so maybe there's a possibility of it being taught in an unskillful way in certain environments or alienating people because of that. So I think we need to be very conscious about that. To make it practical and accessible to different groups, and we need to, or individuals, and grounded in evidence. I often think of the science as being like getting the horse to the water, but that's not the real learning in meditation. The real learning is experience. But the science and the evidence, teaching in an evidence-based way, I think is really important, and we need to be conscious of that. One other thing, or a couple of things I'll mention, is one, that we can have our own particular forms of meditation we love and practice, and there is the potential, which I think is very counterproductive, for it to become, in some way, like a conflict between different groups, like whose meditation is the best and so on. And I hope it's always going to be a very collaborative and unifying kind of practice, because we don't want to get caught in a competition between any particular form of meditation. I think it's very helpful if there's great respect shown for people teaching meditation from various tradition and background. And what I sometimes call the 4 Fs, being flexible with the form, being adaptable and creative with teaching meditation, but faithful to the philosophy. And mind you, that's not 4 Fs, that's 3 Fs and a PH. But anyway, but flexible with the form. We can get very rigid about things when we need to be creative at various times, but very faithful to the philosophy and not to throw that out, which we may actually throw out the most important part of meditation. So I hope that's under 15 minutes. Am I under 15 minutes? Anyway, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope this has been useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig. You always surprise me that you can fit so much into such a short time, and it's mind-boggling your fluency and ease with it.